speech, and from the bottom of my heart, yeah, it's I will. I mean, I really appreciate, yeah, for your willingness, yeah, to give a talk, yeah, in this morning. So thank you, Pak Nazar. Yeah, I think that's all for me.
Okay, thank you very much, Pak Toto. And now I would like to ask another short opening remark from Ibu Sonia, please.
Oke, oke, Mas Nazar. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Selamat pagi, Bapak Ibu yang saya hormati, distinguished speaker. It is with great pleasure that I welcome you in today's webinar with the title Revitalizing Languages in a Multilingual Environment. So once again, on behalf of the Department of Linguistics of Faculty of Humanities Universitas Indonesia, I would like to express our gratitude to Professor Stefanie Pillai from University of Malaya for delivering her knowledge today with us. I think this topic is very important and relevant for Indonesia. Yeah, we can learn so much from Professor Pillai's research on the matter. So I wish you today a fruitful discussion and looking forward to hearing your speech, Professor Pillai. So thank you again, Nazar.
Yeah,
Thank
thank
you.
you. Thank
Yes.
you very much, Bu Sonia. And for the next uh, event will be a screen capture or like photos session before we start. So please, if you don't mind, please turn on your video. And this session will be led by Ibu Putu and Ibu Harni.
Okay, Baputo, are you ready?
Okay, Mbak Harni. Okay, I will take the picture from first page. 1, 2, 3. Okay, and for the second page. 1, 2, 3. Okay, it's done.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. And now I would like to remind you to mute your microphone during the Zoominar, and uh, mm, I will read a little bit about Professor Stefanie, and she is a professor at the Faculty of Languages and Linguistics, University of Malaya, and she is currently a dean of the Social Advancement and Happiness Research Cluster. And her areas of research interest include acoustic phonetics, language documentation, language revitalization, and English language education. And she have published quite extensive studies in these areas. Uh, she is working with Malacca Portuguese community representative on language documentation and revitalization efforts. And I would like to highlight one of her initial work. Uh, she recently developed a mobile application, Bibo Portmal. You can download it from Apple Store and Google Play. It's a mobile dictionary collaboration with several Malaccan Portuguese speakers. And well, I think before I take too much time, without further ado, please, Professor Stefanie, the floor is
Thank you.
yours.
Thank you so much, Naza.
Mm.
Good morning to Pak Suhardijanto and also to Ibu Sonia and everyone else. Thank you so much to the Department of Linguistics of the Faculty of Humanities at UI for inviting me to give this talk. I'm very honored to be able to share my work. So I hope that I will have some discussion with you later, with all of you who are listening in. Thank you to everyone who has taken the time to listen in as well. So I'm going to start. Nazar, how long do I have?
Well, you have around 40 minutes.
Okay.
Yes.
And you will hit me on the head
Yeah.
if I go over time. All right.
Okay.
Okay, guys, I'm
Take
going
your
to
time.
try to share. I see some of my students there as well. Thank you for joining us. Let me try to share my screen and then I will begin. Okay. And I think that everyone should be able to see the screen now. Yeah, Nazar, it can be seen. Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, all right. So today I'm actually gonna share with you my work on Malacca Portuguese as an example of how when we in our countries, Malaysia, Indonesia, we actually when we talk about this thing called language revitalization, we are actually not just working on one language because our speakers will have access or can speak at least one other language, if not more than one. So it is quite different, perhaps, from some places where the focus is always on that one language, and often we forget about the environment that we are in, the language environment, the language ecology, if you like. So allow me to share with you, and give me a second. Okay, so what I'll try to do in this 40 minutes that I've been given is to just give you a little. Most of you know about Malaysia. For those of you who are outside of Malaysia, Indonesia, and elsewhere, but I'll just give a very brief, like a snapshot of the multilingual situation of Malaysia, and then I'll zoom into Malacca Portuguese itself. Some of you are familiar. In fact, we have a brother or sister community in Tugu, right? Who used to speak Tugu Portuguese but still perform in Tugu Portuguese. And then I will move on to what a little bit of the conceptual understanding of revitalization and endangerment, not too theoretical, I promise you. And then we will look at some of the revitalization projects that we have been doing to encourage the use of Malacca Portuguese. And I'll end by kind of summing up what are some of the lessons learned in the projects we have done, and hopefully these lessons might also be useful to you. Yeah, so I'm just gonna do a time check. Okay, so I will begin with the first thing about multilingual Malaysia. The picture that you see is actually taken from the Portuguese settlement where I do my work, and it is actually by the coast. Okay, so the situation in Malaysia is basically that Indonesia also has hundreds of languages, I know, and we have about, according to Ethnologue, about plus minus 137 languages. You know that there's always an issue about what we consider to be a language, okay? But I won't go into that today. So in Malaysia, of course, we have our national language, Bahasa Melayu, and then we have English. So the sizes that you see kind of reflect the, I guess, the focus, if you like, on these languages. English is not an official language in Malaysia. The official language is also Bahasa Malaysia or Bahasa Melayu. English is used in education as a subject. It is a compulsory subject in all schools, and we have so many international schools where English is the main medium of instruction. We also, at the primary level in the government schools, we do have Mandarin medium and or Chinese medium and Tamil medium schools as well. So because to cater for the Chinese and the Tamil speaking community in Malaysia. And we do have schools where it is mainly done in Arabic. We do have Arabic schools. But at the secondary level for government schools, most of us will go to Malay medium schools, right? There isn't Chinese or Tamil secondary schools. The Chinese secondary schools are private schools. Then of course within all this you have Malay dialects, so you cross geographical borders in Malaysia, you will find that the Malay starts sounding different. Some not, even if you speak Bahasa Melayu or Bahasa Indonesia, you will find that they are not mutually intelligible, right? Like the Kelantanese dialect, the Malay spoken in Kelantan would be difficult for even for me to understand, and I definitely can't speak it. Yeah. Then we have so many other Chinese languages. You've got Hokkien, Hakka, Cantonese, Fuzhou, and so many of the other ones. Other Indian languages apart from Tamil, okay, we also have that, both southern ones and the northern Indian ones. And not to forget, although they are in a minority in terms of population, we have indigenous languages both in Peninsular Malaysia and in Sabah and Sarawak. Okay, and amidst all this, we also have at least three Creoles. Okay, and Malacca Portuguese is one of them. Okay, the other two are also in Malacca. So because of the history of Malacca. And of course, we have many other languages of new people who have come in, people who have migrated from other parts of Asia. That and we do also teach some foreign languages in schools as well. So you can see that it is really a beautiful, mix of languages. And but most people in Malaysia would be able to speak at least two languages. Okay, and I think it is probably similar to Malaysia as well. Okay, let me move on. So that is like a little snapshot of what we're doing. If you want to hear some of these indigenous languages or orang asli languages that are spoken in Peninsular Malaysia, go to our YouTube channel, my faculty's YouTube channel, Languages and Linguistics channel, and you can hear about 5 different orang asli languages where we have animated the Sangkanchil story in these languages. So if you haven't heard these languages before, like Temia, Semai, Jakun, please do go and have a listen. It is, I think, a real eye opener. Yeah. Okay, so just a little bit into the situation in Malaysia. As I mentioned, our national and official language is Bahasa Malaysia, but English is still used quite extensively, especially in public sector business, and for transactions. If you enter the private sector, you will see that a lot of things written and spoken. English being used in this context. Now, in terms of education, English has a lot of emphasis actually given to English. There is even a roadmap to charter to make sure that our level of English doesn't kind of go down, because we feel that some of our graduates, for example, we feel that without having English, you are not empowered to particular jobs. You're not empowered to it stops you from a lot of things because of the gatekeeping the gatekeeping. Oops, I think somebody has got their mic on. Okay, sorry. Okay, the gatekeeping role that English has, whether we like it or not. Okay, I mean, of course, there are so many issues there, but that is the case. And then we also have now a halatuju, or a roadmap also for pendidikan bahasa Melayu for Malay education. So it is enshrined legally, right? In our federal constitution, it states that Malay is our national language, and then further on in later it was stated that it is also our official language. And then the Education Act also states that Malay should be the main medium of instruction in government schools. So apart from what I mentioned earlier, the Mandarin and Tamil medium schools. Okay, let me move on. So that's just to give you a little bit of snapshot of the languages that kind of have more advantage, if you like, or given more focus, because that will happen, right? I mean, with so many hundreds of languages, inevitably some languages will start to be seen as being more important than others. And so these are the underlying ideologies, even if we don't have it on paper. When you focus on certain languages in education, when that language becomes important for you to get a job, to go into higher education, to get promoted, to elevate your social life, for social mobility, even economic mobility, then of course the impression that you are giving is that, well, some languages are more important than others. So what happens to these other languages that are not in education, or are not given any like power? Because then and you can also, we do, our constitution says that we can actually, we cannot be stopped from using other languages, right? In other contexts, we can also teach languages if um, there are enough students, and of course you need to have the resources. So there comes the problem: where do we have the resources to teach, let's say, an indigenous language in school? At the moment, only 3 indigenous languages are actually taught in schools in Malaysia. Yeah. Because of the numbers and because of the available resources. The other ideological assumption that you will get from, if you look at the Malaysian situation, linguistic situation, is that somehow we are very English centric still. Okay, so we have that baggage, colonial baggage, if you like, and that disempowers a lot of people, because the majority of people we may learn English in school, but we may not actually use it in our daily lives, the impression you get is that everybody in Malaysia speaks English. We may speak a more colloquial variety of English, and not the standard Malaysian English or standard variety of English. Okay, so there is this tension between English and whether it is empowering and disempowering people, and what that could lead to social distance between people, right? Okay, and of course the other ideology is like, when you have a national language, you have, is that is also to build, it's for nationhood, it is to build us, to keep us together as a nation. Then what about the other languages, your own heritage and cultural languages? What about that? Is that important? Is there a tension between your own ethnic and cultural identity and the national identity? I think all of us face this at certain points, from the time that we gain independence to now, and that sometimes changes as well as we have different problems that come in, caused by whether it's politics or ethnic differences, religious differences. You see that all over the world. Yeah, so I just want to point out that when we do language revitalization, when we do this kind of work, we cannot do this in a vacuum. You need to look at the whole scenario of the country and of the people to really understand what you are doing, and perhaps to understand how people feel as well, and how authorities feel as well. Yeah, especially if you need support from authorities to carry out your project. Okay, so let me go to Malacca Portuguese now. Yeah. And for those of you who are not familiar with Malacca Portuguese, well, from 1511 to 1641, we had the Portuguese in Malacca, and then there were the Portuguese came from India, and from Goa. Well, and you know they brought along with them on their ships. There would have been also people from all the all the places that they were at, like India, maybe even Africa. Okay, and there are historical documents that talk about the people who came. So anyway, there were unions between these people who came and locals, right? Mainly men and local women, but there were some Portuguese women also brought to Malacca. So anyway, but this is not the actual picture of them. This is a picture of my grandparents' wedding, actually. But what I wanted to say, so the unions, okay, led to this group of people that we now know as the Portuguese Eurasians. And these days, of course, the Portuguese Eurasians, or just sometimes called Eurasians, sometimes called Serrani, most of us are mixed. Okay, most of us are biracial. Some of us throughout, some people throughout history, they have got Dutch, they have got British, and so on. Yeah, so it is actually, it's not like, oh, you have one Portuguese ancestor and one local ancestor. I mean, 500 years plus on, it is a whole mix of people. But yet, there is this very distinct Portuguese Eurasian culture that still goes on, and the language is still being spoken. So I believe that in Tugu, it is no longer spoken. It is performed in song, in music, but not spoken. But we still have speakers, okay? The numbers, the exact numbers are, well, it fluctuates. In Malacca itself, there are probably about 2,500 people who speak it at different levels of fluency. And we still have a Kampong Portuguese, which I will show you. So the Malacca Portuguese people, this is a performance by some of by one of the dance troops or cultural troops. And you can see from the pakaian, yeah, the baju, it's a kabaya labo. This is the traditional, actually, what the traditional wear of the people. And they still perform in the language, but they also still speak the language, and we all look all we have different colors and looks because of all the mix that we have. Okay. um, and in terms of language and culture, as I said, in most Portuguese Eurasians are Catholics, but as I said, because of the mixed marriages and so on, we also have people from different religious groups. Yeah, so it transcends that. It transcends religion and the ethnic kind of mix that you have. But in Malacca, in the Portuguese settlement, this is Kampung Portuguese in Malacca, about 2 hours, 2.5 hours from Kuala Lumpur, yeah, south of Kuala Lumpur. There is a very distinct the culture is still practiced and the language is still spoken. So this year, of course, everything it has to be stopped or toned down because of the situation that we are in now. Otherwise, it's especially now for Christmas, it's usually very vibrant, lots of things going on. Every house is beautifully decorated. And you hear people going around singing Christmas songs and so on. So the language and the culture still exist very strongly in Malacca and especially in the Portuguese settlement. Okay, now but this is what we get for people who live outside, people who do not live in Malacca, who do not live outside. Most of them have already, I guess, almost the third generation or fourth generation now, have grown up speaking English as their first language. Okay, and I think I not think I know that even in the Portuguese settlement, many young children are growing up. They know some Kristang, but many of them will be growing up and are growing up speaking English as their first language. But probably it sounds like it is a slightly different variety from the one that I might use at home in Kuala Lumpur. Okay, so you can see that in the family itself, they are already using English. This is outside of Malacca, right? Eurasians who live in KL, for example, in Kuala Lumpur, in the Klang Valley. But we also find that in the settlement, okay, where they will say that, okay, the older generation, the grandparents, so if they have grandparents living with them, older parents, then because they would still speak Kristang or Malacca Portuguese, but the younger generation will tend to answer back in English. Only very few people that we spoke to insisted that their grandchildren or their children actually answered back in English, in Malacca Portuguese. So you have like someone speaking in Malacca Portuguese and then answer in English, and that is quite common, yeah, and people using English but throwing in like a Portuguese word. So this is even in the settlement where most of the younger generation, like kids, you will hear them using mainly English. Okay. So the current context, therefore, is that there are fewer younger speakers. There's been so many studies looking at the social linguistic profile of speakers, looking at the social linguistic context, and without a doubt, definitely there are fewer younger speakers of like a Portuguese, fewer fluent speakers, with English being a more dominant language for most of them, and English becoming the new home language even in the Portuguese settlement. When I say new, it's because we are looking into it. One of my students who is actually, I think, listening in, we're looking at the variety of English that's being used by these this new generation, young generation of Malacca Portuguese people, because it is a new kind of English. Maybe it's Christanglish, I don't know, and it's not wrong. It is a natural phenomena, because it's influenced by Malacca Portuguese, the Malacca Portuguese spoken around them. So of course, over time, one of the reasons that many people don't speak like a Portuguese fluently is, of course, they switch to English. There were less contexts for them to use Malacca Portuguese, for example, in religious service, in mass, for example, right? If the family stops using, or you live in a place where you do not have anybody else to speak to, so it starts diminishing, right? But here's the nice thing that we have noticed in our when we do projects in Malacca, is that I find that there is a lot more. there's a strong increasing positive attitude towards Malacca Portuguese. Even if people are not fluent, they want to learn, they want to use it, they want to practice it. They use it in different media, like social media, for example, text messages. It becomes a secret language for young people if they want to mengata orang, or they want to, like all of us, right? We switch to our own language when we want, we don't want outsiders to know what we're speaking. So in a sense, the younger generation, especially the older teenagers and young people in their 20s and 30s, I feel that there is a stronger sense of identity, of wanting to strike your identity, wanting to say we are Malacca Portuguese, this is our language, this is our culture. And that is a good thing, because a lot of studies, and Austin and Salaban point this out in their editorial of a special issue, I think, of a Journal of Multilingual and Multicultural Development. Yeah, I will put the references when I send you with the PDF later. Okay, so attitudes to language are actually very, very important, because if you do not have a positive attitude, if you don't care, or if you think the language is not important, it's like it doesn't do anything to me, it's got no value, then trying to keep it going is going to be very, very hard. Of course, there are external factors as well. We cannot deny it. Education, how authorities see, how other people see you, all those things. External factors are also, important. But we find that self attitudes of the people themselves, the speakers themselves, can actually do a lot to help to keep a language from dying out. Yeah. So let me go on to what we understand about Malacca Portuguese, at least in terms of endangerment, in terms of revitalization. So as we look out into the sea, which is being encroached by land, by development, and by landfills and so on, you know, um, and as we look out from the kampong, do we feel that the language is dying? Because there were some reports that said, oh, Malacca Portuguese is dying, it's on its last legs. It is definitely endangered because of the number of speakers, right? Because we are a minority community, and the main fluent speakers are in Malacca, are in the Portuguese settlement. So in that sense, because there are, as I said earlier, less fluent speakers, less younger speakers, and there is a decrease in the language being passed from one generation to one generation, but it hasn't stopped. It's still going on, because you still have older speakers who are living within the family unit. So as long as that is there, we're still kind of safe, if you like, safe, but not we're not on a home run yet. So we have to do something. Okay, and also there are all these people who live outside of Malacca who do not have context of use. So how do we make sure that these people living outside Malacca, Portuguese people, or people with Portuguese heritage living outside of Malacca, also have opportunities to speak or use the language at least to a certain level. Okay, and as I said, you have English, you have Malay, you go to school, you learn everything in Malay, then you study English, you use English is your dominant language. So there are all these like red lights, if you like, all these things flashing. So definitely there is a need to make sure that we have enough resources, that we have efforts to encourage people to keep using Malacca Portuguese. And I just want to say that when we talk about language revitalization, this is from the handbook of language revitalization, that we talk about the activities designed to maintain the language, but also to increase the presence. So how do we increase the presence? A few years ago, not many people even knew, oh, there is this language, you have a crew. Even now, some people or students that I speak to have never heard of Malacca Portuguese. So what more the community itself, right? We want them to feel that, hey, this is something that people know about. And so we want to also increase the presence in different contexts. Yeah, so new contexts, even electronic and social media, for example. Okay, so one of the things that's important for keeping a language going is attitudes, but along with that are motivations. So in a study that was based on my student's PhD, So Wendy's PhD, she looked at what were the motivations, and she found that there were both internal and external motivations, right? And one of it is some people felt it's my responsibility. If I don't do it, who's going to do it, right? I can't just say it's not my problem, because this is my language, this is my culture. In my language, there are things there that contain elements of my culture. Therefore, it is my responsibility, it is our responsibility. So there is a sense of responsibility among many people, yeah. And then they also feel that along with this, why they need to keep this going is because is that it's related to who they are, and how it language and all the cultural practices that go along with it. They are part of my heritage, right? It's not a building, it's not a monument, but it is something that's passed on from one generation to another generation. Whether you sing in it or you perform in it, whether you say prayers in it, whether you use it spoken or on social media, and people will say, if we don't keep it, then who is going to keep this? Who's going to keep this heritage? Who's going to pass on this information that you use these words when you wish someone congratulations, or how do I say happy birthday in that language? So it's a part of your heritage to restore and to keep your heritage as well. And then the next main motivation was ownership and control. And I think this was one of the very interesting things that we found in this study, because um, previously, a lot of people, as I said, right, the concentration of speakers are in Malacca, are in the Portuguese settlement. So it's not to say that people outside, there are speakers outside as well. Um, but if the main concentration of people, okay, feel that it's outsiders that are coming, researchers, academics, okay, who are coming in and studying the language, and then, writing papers about it, saying things about it, about the language, about the culture, about the state of endangerment, if you like, then, and then, coming up with dictionaries and books and so on. Not a wrong thing, but personally, people start feeling I have no control over my language. Someone else is saying how my language is. Someone else is saying what my vocabulary is like. Someone else is giving meaning to these things. Someone else is saying how this should be pronounced. And they're like, but we don't say it that way, right? Or that's not, we would never use this word here, or this word is, only used by in this certain context. So there is a sense that we are losing control over our own heritage, over our own language, okay? Because there is a disconnect between people who do research, who do documentaries, and show off, oh, I went to Malacca and this is the food, this is the people, as if they're like some showcase kind of, museum kind of artifact, right? So there's a sense that I think we need to take ownership. We need to say we are in control. We want to be part of the decision making process, right? And then and then we also have the sense of identity. The pictures that you see, I've actually taken one part. I've extracted it from a bigger picture, a drawing cut by a very famous cartoonist in Malaysia, Lat. And there is some ideological thing behind this comic, which I won't go into. But you can see that this dress style is very different from what I showed you in the earlier slide, where they were walking, they were wearing their kebaya labo, right? Here they are wearing something that looks quite Western, but this is what you will see on all the tourist representations of Malacca Portuguese, and this is more a performance costume, if you like. Why the guitar? Because the community, we are also the community is known for being very good musicians and very talented musicians and dancers as well. So the identity of who you are, who is making decisions about who you are, what your identity is. You're not Indian, you're not Chinese, you don't come from India, you don't come from China, you don't come from Portugal, you don't know who your ancestors in Portugal are. So who are you? Because here are a group of people, the majority of whom have been homegrown, if you like. We grew out of these unions, we grew out of this contact between different cultures or different ethnicities. So it's a very unique homegrown community, and so the identity issue is very complex if you know the Malaysian situation. Okay, I'll be happy to maybe answer questions about that later. Okay, so just checking my time. Okay, I should speed it up a little bit. Okay, so all this motivations leads to an awareness of having to do something, and leads to wanting to revitalize. Now, when I say revitalize, it's not that it's dead, but just creating more opportunities, creating more activities, more resources for using the language, for encouraging the use of the language, making it easier to access information, not some books in some library, some thesis, but something that's more accessible to the community and done with community representatives. Okay, so what are the enabling factors for all of this? I will go through this again, but it is about whether you think your language is important. Okay, you feel that there is importance despite the ideologies that might put your language, might background your language. You say that I think my language is important. I think that it is worth doing something about it, and I am willing to commit to doing something about it. I may have the awareness, I may think that it's my responsibility. I want to keep my identity, but then I may feel that I cannot commit. Okay, because doing projects like this takes a lot of commitment, and I'm very grateful to all the people that I've worked with at the Portuguese settlement, especially, and with the Malacca Portuguese Eurasian Association, who have really, spent hours and hours of their time with working on projects. Okay, and then collaboration, because often you need resources from outside, you need the buy-in from other parties. So in my case, I can come in, I can talk to my university, I can see if there are available either research funds or funds for community engagement, or I can approach other people, the private sector, to come in as well. So you need connections. You cannot be doing it alone. You need collaboration within the community and also with external parties to bring it out. You also probably need funding, and this is probably very challenging, yeah, but it helps a lot. Okay, and this leads you, sometimes one project or leads you to other ideas, to be more creative about the activities that projects that you can do. So those are, I'll come back to the enabling factors. Now, to be sustainable, I have to say this, we need solidarity. Without solidarity, if people are just going to say, I don't want to do it because you are doing it, I don't want to be involved because is involved, it's not going to work. The community needs to take ownership and say, this is our language, and we are willing to commit, we are willing to give certain things to it for the benefit of the community. And it also needs the community to feel empowered to do things. Okay, that yes, we may not be a university professor, but we know more about the language than you, university professor. So we are empowered to give our we can consult on the language, we can give you input, we can say, no, this is not how you do it, this is not how we say things, and you have a voice. Okay, so how, I'm just gonna quickly show you like how, when we some of the projects that we did. So one of the earlier ones was the book. Okay, so this is very traditional, it's like a textbook, if you like, a course book, but we put in it's really based on cultural elements, stories, recipes, and festivals, and so on. And here you see some of the children that are learning using the book, and there are several people who teach it in different ways. There's Sarah and Philo that teach it. Some do it online. Philo does it using Facebook. Sarah used to teach it in the settlement, but now has gone creative and is doing online classes. So you have a resource that you can use, and it's cheap. It's available. You can buy the book online. It's not like hundreds of ringgit. It's not something that is only available in some university library. Okay, so it makes it easier. And as I said, we put cultural elements in the book after, as we worked with the community representatives, with the Malacca Portuguese Eurasian Association representatives, Michael, Sarah, Philo, and several others who helped. We had people who were teachers, people who had education background, linguists. So there was a whole group of people working on this, and we put in things so that when you read the book, you also learn about cultural elements. You learn a song, you learn a recipe, you learn about a story that you probably haven't heard before. Okay, um, so now what is important here is actually, okay, the things that I talked about. So in doing this book, we had people who felt this was something important, that your language is important enough to come up with a book collaboratively. Okay, you also had commitment, strong commitment from people who sat for hours working on the materials. Okay, you had collaboration, university, association, community representatives, teachers, Portuguese teachers coming in. Okay, even KL Eurasians helping out. We had money, thankfully. We had community engagement funds from University Malaya, and so the enablers were there. Okay, next, which Naza mentioned earlier, is our app. It's still work in progress, so we're still adding words as we go along. But you can search for words in Kristang, Malacca Portuguese, or English. You can listen to the sounds, and it is available free. Again, all the enablers were there. Okay, because people thought this is important enough to come up with an app, and I could persuade the university to fund me to come up to develop this app. Um, you know, because I could tell them the importance of having to do this project, of having, and we use English in this project. Mainly use English and Kristang, so we did not. I don't think we didn't use Malay. Okay, although we would have loved to, it's just too much input and too much time taken. So and we wanted to cater maybe for a larger audience, right or wrong, well, that was a decision made. Okay, and it had all the enablers, and it was creative because we started to use something that is easily accessible by anyone who has a smartphone. Okay, so you get more creative. Next is something very, very unique, which we did together with the Free Linguistics Conference, where we started to look at elements of microtourism, if you like. Okay, and here you see more things. You have all the enablers. You become more creative, and you see the children involved here teaching a group of foreign visitors, and it gives you pride that other people are interested to learn your language, which gives you a reason to keep using your language. It adds prestige. It is an empowering factor, and of course it is an opportunity to earn a little bit of money as well, pocket money for the kids. And the community comes in terms of providing food, venues. It is very much like a homegrown activity, done by the people for the people. It's not some tourist company bringing a group of tourists just looking at, that's a Portuguese person, that's come, let's eat their food. It just stops there. It's no engagement. There's no engagement with the people. Whereas in projects like this, there will be engagement. Now, this was just a test, if you like, a pilot project, but people have taken this on and done this further, which is what we wanted, right? We give you a possible model, and after we work on a possible model with you, and now you can take over and you can adapt and modify it. And very recently, from that language travels, because we use Nina Boboy, the song. If those of you in Indonesia also have a version of Nina Boboy, so we actually used it, and as the verses from there, and we decided to come up with two books from there that can be used in future language travels, and also we want children to start reading it. And as you can see here, we use three languages now. We included Malay as well. Okay, so even if children or parents do not know Malacca Portuguese, but because they know Malay and English, they can make out what the words are in Kristang. And so, the more you hear, the more you read, you get familiarized with how it sounds like and how it looks like. And the drawings, by the way, was actually, all the drawings were done by the children involved in the project. So it is, again, we want community involvement, community to be very much part of the projects. Okay, and again, all the enablers this time were there, including, as you can see, they're all different things that we think of. One project sometimes gives birth to another project that's linked. Okay, and here we see more kind of language travels, this time for a group of Malaysians, and you can see again English being used, but also Malay here. And when they gave the recipe orally, then we taught them what were the Kristang words for for some of these things, okay, although we do use Malay words for a lot of the local ingredients, okay. And so it was done via cooking, so we had different groups cooking two dishes, dabble and also soy limang, I think it was, okay, a dish with aubergines, and then each group then cooked their version of it. And you can see there are some Malacca Portuguese people who are also helping out. The children also were involved, because some of the younger children can actually cook. So it was quite fun that people learn about the culture and language by interacting with children and older members of the community together, while learning about the community and their culture and language, okay. um, and so and so it is a form of microtourism, right? And it has all these elements again, okay, which both for the kids and for the older community is something I think that's beneficial. So we're taking it another level. And all this, I think, reminds us that really the ecology of a language is determined primarily by the people who learn it, use it, and transmit it to others, okay. So we're putting back power into the people when we do this, and we are using our multilingual resources. So I'm almost coming to an end, okay. What are the lessons learned really when we are doing all these projects? I am going to reiterate what I said earlier, that we need we need communities to feel that despite um, what the ideologies, underlying ideologies and assumptions may be in language policy, language education policy, if you feel that your language is important enough because it's so related for whatever reason, whatever your motivations are, which I mentioned earlier, okay, and then you feel that you are able to commit to working together, and working on projects, you feel that you are able to work with each other in the community and with external parties, that has some issues there, so there are things that need to be sorted out there, perhaps because of your strength, because of how you have done your previous projects, you actually now you have the ability to get more funds to help your project. And the little green thing there is that more and more we will think of more creative ideas. How can we do this where, like Sarah's doing classes online, Philo is teaching using Facebook, and I think there's Martin has been doing virtual tours. It's amazing all the things that you can do despite us not being able to travel and visit a place and meet the people, meet the community physically, yeah. And to move on, as I also mentioned earlier, it's so important. It is not easy, solidarity even among people, any group of us, whether at work or in our kampongs or in our communities, it's not easy to work together. We all have our differences, but we need to understand what the larger picture is, and we need to take ownership. We need to feel empowered. I can do this. I'm not shy. Who's going to want to listen to me? I'm just a village person. No, okay, you need to feel empowered. And I think working on projects has empowered, at least the people that I work with, the children that I have been working with. And as you can see, because of our multilingual nature, we use these resources we are starting to use more and more. I think in the beginning we didn't, right? And we also, again, were so English centric, but now we think that we need to also add the national language as well. So we make use of multilingual resources that we have. So, and the agility, meaning that you're able to move. I can't do my class physically, I move online. I can't show people around Malacca physically, so I will do it virtually. So we have different, we become agile, we think of different ways of doing things, right? So with that, I will stop talking, but muito grande merci to everyone that's been a part of all the projects and helping to revitalize Malacca Portuguese in a multilingual environment. Michael, Philo, Sarah, Dolores, the MPEA, all the Malacca Portuguese community, my project team members, too many to mention, Amar, and Leslie, and all my friends and family members. Of course, my university, who has really supported me in everything that I have done, with funding and also with moral support, and my faculty as well. And here's a picture of me and my mother, who is who is a Portuguese Eurasian. So with that, I will perhaps stop sharing and get back to all of you. Right. Thank you so much for listening, everyone.
Oh, thank you very much. Well, muito grande merci. Okay, nice. Well,
Excellent.
actually, you still have several minutes. You
Oh,
still
I
have
do? Oh,
like
okay.
5 or 7 minutes,
Oh,
I
actually,
guess.
I should have gone on.
Uh, okay, and it is interesting to see your presentation. And while we are waiting for uh, some questions, well, I would like to highlight several things, and uh, I will ask you for like a little bit confirmation about.
Sure.
It is interesting to see that you said, or you mentioned about in this language you have like fewer fluent speakers, but you gaining plus attitudes.
Yes.
So, well, it is quite ironic, I guess,
Yes.
because the attitude is positive,
Yeah.
but the this fluent speaker is decreasing.
Yeah.
So, can you explain a bit about that
Yes.
situation? Thank you.
Yes. I actually have one of my collaborators on online. Sarah,
Mm-hmm.
is there? Sarah, wave
Mm-hmm.
at everyone. That's Sarah, who teaches
Okay.
Malacca Portuguese online now,
Mm-hmm.
and yeah, has been featured on many international programs as well,
Yeah.
for her cooking traditional dishes. So yeah, so basically, you know, there is a positive attitude. I think that's also related to the Malaysian situation about the way that we divide people racially. You know, you have a Malay, Chinese, Indian, or Bumiputra, and then you have others. So people who are mixed, people who are Eurasians will come under others, line. You know, and when you're
Okay.
categorized
Mm-hmm.
as line, it's kind of like, um, how do you feel, right? It's like you don't
Mm-hmm.
have a sense
Mm-hmm.
of belonging. You are just
Yeah.
lumped together with a whole bunch of other people. So there is like a sense that, hey, we are somebody. We need to forge our identity. So even if, like, I don't speak the language so fluently, or because I grew up speaking English, or even if you're living in the settlement, right? Then you suddenly feel, hey, I need to forge this identity. How can I forge it? I can't be wearing, costume every day, right? To show that I am this person. So I do it by maybe, some young people have got enterprises like they open restaurants, right? So the restaurants will showcase like a Portuguese food. Some other enterprising young people have come up with clothing items, T-shirts that say, I am, I have Portuguese DNA, or I am Kristang, Gentik Kristang, or during. So it is different ways. But before this, we really didn't see this. I would say maybe 10 years ago, we didn't see these kind of things coming up, but now we do. And during festivals, we see the young people actually being a very big part of the organization of these festivals, because of course they are good at design, they are good at using social media, digital media. So in that sense, it's positive. But what's happening within families, right? Whether families are passing on the language as the older generation dies out. We have lost quite a few of the older generation over the last 2 3 years, actually, and very key people who were like, the key cultural doyens, if you like, who really spoke the language very fluently. As we lose them, we lose our actual resource, right? Who we can go to ask, what was this? How do we say this? What is the word for this? And then, of course, passing on as these people leave and are no more in the family and in the village. Less and less, there will be less chances for young parents, especially, who themselves may not be so fluent. How do they pass it on to the next generation? What about those of us who are outside? We ourselves, whether we are biracial or of mixed ethnicities, but when we have Portuguese heritage, we want to say we have that heritage. So that's where the positive attitude is coming on. You see, during the maybe even post British colonization, and in to some people still perhaps, it it was like a negative thing. You don't want to say you have Portuguese heritage, or you want to say Serrani if you're British or Dutch, but somehow Portuguese is like, oh, they're all these people living in the kampong. You don't want to. But now it's different. Now it's like you're proud. So that sense of pride has changed. Things change over time, right? So that's the positive trend. But whether people are starting to learn the language, whether they will reach that level of fluency, probably not, right? As the older generation dies out, especially outside of the settlement. But at least it's not dead. It's still being used at maybe conversational level, maybe in social media. And having the dictionary app, for example, is useful because every time I don't know a word, I can go there and look at it. Then I can text Sarah, and we have a WhatsApp group that Sarah has set up, so I can and then I can say, is that right? Because I'm translating from English, of course. Yeah. So there is a contradiction, but I don't know how it's going to
Mm-hmm.
converge, right? I don't know
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
yet. Yeah. Hopefully
So
it will. Yeah.
it is interesting. So the key is that there is a disruption in the intergenerational transmission of the
Yes.
language itself.
Yes.
Okay, and uh, well, there's one questions, but after the questions, I think I'm also interested to hear some of Sava experience in
Yeah.
teaching of this language.
Yes.
But before that, I want to deliver these questions to you first.
Okay. Sure.
So this question is from Mulyani,
Mm-hmm.
and she asks about young millennials now are likely to leave their heritage language. So how is the effective ways to boost their awareness and usage of the
Mm-hmm.
language in their daily life?
Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, I think that's
Okay.
the
I
question.
think yeah, that's a
Mhm.
great question and kind of relates to what I just said as well. So, um, and when we have people who are living at least in the kampong and Malacca, where there is still a large community of speakers, they can hear it, right? They hear it when you go to the little shop, corner shop, or one neighbor to another neighbor, so they hear it around them. It's still in them, so they can understand at least, right? And then being involved in projects like, so Sarah has a dance troupe, for example, of young children, young people, and it helps because they are learning the culture, and of course the songs are in Malacca Portuguese, and I know that she will use Malacca Portuguese with them, scold them in Malacca Portuguese, so they are hearing it as well, even if at home they may not hear it, and sometimes they are the ones telling their young parents, hey, this is the word for it, because they have picked it up in their cultural experience, or cultural troop experience. So how to encourage it? You need to create a reason for them to want to learn it. It may not be their home language anymore, just as how it is not my home language, but we will learn it as another language. Many of us are learning our heritage languages now. We are, it's ironic, but it's like everything is changed, right? We are actually learning our heritage languages. Who knows? Maybe if this group of young people actually become fluent in it, they are the ones that will be teaching the older generation how to, their parents' generation, how to actually speak it, right? It has happened in different contexts as well. So I think creating context why they would want to use it, like being involved in language travels, for example, where young kids who in school maybe are like, diketepikan, or said, you're not so clever or whatever, or maybe they are not the ones that shine in school, but here they are teaching, professors and postgraduate students from different countries, Japan, America, Australia, Philippines, Pakistan, and they are the ones teaching them, no, 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 this is how you sing this Nina Boy, this is how you act it out. Doesn't that give them that sense of like, hey, and when we ask them, in fact, Amar student did a master's thesis on this, and it shows in when she asked the children, how do you feel about things? And they said, I'm so proud that other people want to learn my language. And how about me, right? I also must know, if they ask me what is this, then they will either go to Philo or Sarah or Mike and say, hey, what is this in Kristanga? And then they will learn it, right? So it's not an immediate process, and it's not, I think it's a lot better than making them sit in the classroom and learning it. So my short answer would be create opportunities, create things where they are involved in it and they are actually part of it. Don't make them just sit there and listen to, teachers going on and on. Yeah. I hope
Okay.
that answers the
Yeah,
question.
yeah, it is it is answering the questions. And then
Yeah.
now I would like to hear some experience from from Sarah, I guess,
Yeah, Sarah. You put on camera. She's like, what?
about the your teaching experience for this Malacca Portuguese. Is it okay? Yeah.
Sarah, can't hear you, Sarah. Mm.
Hello?
Is your mic on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, it's muted now. I don't know. We can't hear her.
Oh,
Can't Sarah? Can't hear you, Sarah.
we still cannot hear you. I think.
Yeah, she's getting somebody
Oh,
to check her. She didn't
okay.
expect to to speak.
Okay.
Yeah, so maybe while waiting for Sarah, if
Yeah.
there are any questions, I
Yeah.
can.
I have one question that, and this is related with the you said about the feeling for Portuguese language, and this is from Reza from UI. What's your
Mhm.
opinion of Portuguese teaching in Southeast Asia since it is less popular than other European languages?
Okay. So you're talking
Mhm.
about European Portuguese, right?
Yes. Mhm.
Um, I mean, right now, okay, there can be tension here because we're talking about a variety of Portuguese when we talk about Malacca, so it's totally different from, it's not we're not talking about European Portuguese. So,
Mhm.
but if you talk about teaching European Portuguese, well,
Mhm.
yes, it is not as popular, I suppose, as Spanish and
Mhm.
especially Spanish or even well, if non-European languages, Korean, Japanese, but we do have it in some universities as an elective subject. We don't, at our university at least, we don't teach it as a degree subject. We do have Spanish, Italian, French as a degree subject, but not Portuguese. But we do teach it as an elective subject, and it is quite popular, perhaps because of our
Mhm.
very dynamic teacher, Cikgu Jamian. And I think he's coming out with some micro, what do you call it? Like kind of a MOOC thing for teaching Portuguese. So there are a lot of history
Mhm.
students are interested in learning Portuguese as well as Dutch, so that they can access documents, old documents. Yeah. Yeah, that's the state of being for now.
Okay.
Yeah, but I
Yeah.
think one thing to
Thank
just be
you.
be cautious of, because we have found this tension sometimes happening, is when people go to the Portuguese settlement and think that
Mhm.
oh, the Portuguese being spoken in the settlement or by Malacca Portuguese people is a wrong kind of Portuguese, and
Mhm.
saying that, oh, this is like a bastardized version. You must learn the real Portuguese. In fact, I did want to show you a poster which I found, which almost said
Mhm.
that. And so there is this tension, and it makes people, those kind of things is bad because it makes you feel that,
Mhm.
oh, my language is not good. I need to learn real Portuguese. But
Mhm.
we are talking about different varieties, right? We cannot be
Yes.
saying
Yes.
that one is better than the other. You can learn Portuguese as well if you want, just like you
Mhm.
can learn French or Italian. Yeah.
Mhm. Okay. Thank you. And Sarah, how is it?
Cannot still.
Oh, I still
Yeah.
cannot hear you.
I think,
Oh,
Sarah, you
that's too
check your
bad.
settings. Yeah, if you can check your
Uh,
settings. Yeah. Cannot hear you.
ah,
Yeah. I think her
oh, that's too
settings
bad.
maybe.
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Well, that's okay. Uh, I will move on to the next questions then.
Mm-hmm.
This questions is from Pak Toto Suhardianto.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are the key factors for language revitalization? Do they bound to specific and local environments? Or, I
Mm.
mean, it would be different from region to region,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, yes, definitely. As I mentioned in my talk, you need to look at the whole situation in the
Mm-hmm.
country, in the location in that you are. You need to take into account all the factors around that surround the language, because if
Mm-hmm.
but there are certain things which will be similar, and I think those are the head and the heart things. The way people, remember the enablers that I mentioned earlier, and the sustainability factors. I believe that those things, it cuts across. um, of course, external factors play a big part in influencing those enablers as well. If you have a country where the policies really cut off and say that you can only focus on one language, or the official or national language, and other languages are a no because it's bad for national unity, then it's going to be very hard for people to fight that system. We are lucky in Malaysia that we do not have such a system, so it allows you, I mean, of course ideologically there are what some things are more important, some things are more weight, but the heart and the head factors, the enablers, I feel um, are important. So, you know, thinking about your language is something that's important, feeling that you need to actually, you're willing to commit, very important, the commitment. And that's hard when people are living day to day, right? Putting food on the table, asking them, don't go fishing today, don't go to the farm today, sit down with me and work on this dictionary. That's not easy, right? So, how do you overcome things like that? So, there is a bit of project management involved. And that's why having funds is helpful, because then you can compensate people for the time that they are spending with you. Um, yeah, because often we are looking at people who may not, you know, they can't afford to take time off from work and so on. Yeah. Okay. I don't know. Is that useful, Dr. Zohardi Janto? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much. And uh, that's too bad that
Yeah, that Sarah
the
can't join us.
Sarah's
Yeah.
microphone can join us. But well, I hope in the future event you can share something with us.
Yeah.
And this time the questions from Khairina Nasir. As you say earlier, that we feel comfortable to speak our mother tongue, especially when we are in a multilingual environment. So, what do you think about the attitude of children who are raised in the national language who refuse to learn their parents' mother tongue because their parents use their mother tongue when they are not happy with their children' behavior? Well, that's a quite interesting questions indeed.
Yes.
Pretty
Yes.
intriguing.
Yeah.
Uh,
um I guess how it depends on how young the children, and why
mm,
the children would link the heritage language with something negative, right? Because most often the case is they want to know what the parents are
mm,
saying, and so they want to know the language, because then they can, like, oh, you're talking about me or you are scolding me, and so they actually want to learn the language. Often the refusal is because of other things, you know, the external pressures, peer pressure, schools as well, that say you cannot use this language anymore. I was talking, this is an example, I was talking to a teacher recently in a where there are majority indigenous children from a particular tribe in Malaysia, and the school actually doesn't say you cannot use your language in school, and in fact there are teachers in that school who are from that community. So it's brilliant, I think, that they are using it. So in classroom they use Bahasa Malaysia, and then, like, for other things, to explain things, they can actually use the indigenous language, and they even have signs in that language. So bilingual, right? Malay signs, and that language sign. And I think that is one way to actually to encourage kids to see their language around them and to use their language. And the other thing is with children, the funny thing, and I think that happened to all of us. I mean, your kids, you're not interested in this, right? You're interested in your friends and playing, and the language that you can speak, the majority language that you can speak with all your friends, because it won't be cool otherwise, right? But as you
mm,
grow older, what happens is then you feel that sense of, you start feeling, you might, I think most of us do feel that sense of, like, that belonging, you know, you want to belong. And then that's when you start thinking, why didn't I learn this language earlier when I was a child? Yeah. But for children, I think that maybe parents need to spend more time reading, starting younger, rather than just using it for negative things like scolding them, yeah, or mengata them, yeah. So maybe it's the parents' fault.
okay, thank you.
All right.
And I will move to another questions from uh, Professor Duino Fellini Jenner from the University of Sydney.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks for your talk. Could you comment on policy? What aspects of Malaysia's language policy
Mm-hmm.
are or aren't preferable to revitalization efforts?
Okay. Thank you. So, in terms of, like, policy, there's nothing to stop you from revitalizing your language. There's nothing that stops you from even teaching your language, using your language. However, there isn't like any official support per se. So if I wouldn't like there isn't like a body that is responsible for language revitalization or language maintenance, right? So if I want to do it, then it is very much up to the community, which is why it often doesn't happen because the community doesn't have resources. So the policy says you can use whatever language you want. You can, as long as you keep the official language in the domains that you have to use them. But you can use any language, you can teach the language, provided you have the resources. So where do the resources come from then? It has to come from within. So if some communities have economic power, then they can go about and do things for themselves, right? To keep their culture going, to do revitalization projects. And I think that's one of the downsides of us is that we don't have a policy on language maintenance and culture. I mean, we have groups that look at culture and heritage, tourism, but not a policy that says I can help you, I will give you the resources, I will connect you. It is really up to individual researchers, up to individual institutions, and also the community. And I think that is one reason why it's taking long. In some cases, like in Borneo, in Sabah, Sarawak, if you have like I said, if you have a association that has some clout, financial, economic or social clout, they can get together and they can work on things by themselves, right? But in most cases, we are talking about more marginalized or more less maybe socioeconomically well-off communities like indigenous communities. So without resources and without a policy that says for sure that I'm going to provide you with resources, it is difficult. So it allows it, but yet we don't have the resources outright. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Oh, it's getting more and more interesting. And yeah, and the questions also keep coming.
Okay.
Now from Simon Sitoto.
Mm-hmm.
And to what extent is Malacca Portuguese used both in formal and informal domains among the people in that area, as it is not as widely used as the other foreign languages?
All right. It being a mainly spoken language in today's context, of course, it is used more informally in everyday conversations, right? It used to be used in church services, and now there are some cases where there are some prayers that are said. So that would be a more formalized version of Malacca Portuguese that's used in like certain prayers, and also when people are in a formal context and they are giving speeches or giving like addresses during their association meetings. So that's when you would find. So in the majority of cases, it's being used in a more informal, everyday, casual conversation. And in that case, you will also find that there's a mix of Malay and English.
Okay, thank you.
But it's a good
Thank
question, right? It's the
you.
elephant in the room that we don't
Yeah,
talk about. Yeah.
yeah. And uh, there's one thing that also I want to. Well, actually, this is my comment because I'll, I don't know. I cannot stop to try to compare with the situation in Indonesia. For example, like uh, my I'm doing a study on Kisar Island
Mm-hmm.
at the border of East Timor.
Yeah.
On Kisar Island, there was a study from a genetic anthropologist from German, and he talked about the mestizos of Kisar, the mestizo from Kisar Island, and this is the mix between the Dutch and the local. But the interesting fact is the mestizos there doesn't have any Creoles, but with the Malaccan and Portuguese and the Batavia Creoles and the Tugu Creoles,
Yeah.
they make Creole. So what makes them different? Because they both mix. You know?
Mm.
Mm. So
I
what's
yeah.
yeah? I think
I
that's
yeah.
the comment, and
Yeah.
and maybe you can give some things about
Yeah.
that.
I mean, I don't know the
mm,
situation that you're
mm,
talking about, so I can't really answer what happened because
mm,
I don't know what happened there.
mm,
Whether, somebody came
mm,
and said, you cannot use any other language, you
mm,
have to learn my language,
mm,
or it happened in context situations whereby, people were trying to communicate,
mm,
or we reckon that when the Portuguese actually came, they probably,
mm,
or it was the variety that was brought over was also already, a Creole, or beginning to be a mixed
mm.
language already, because they were coming from many different places, right?
Yeah.
So it maybe was easier to transport that. I would think that, and they needed to communicate with locals, and Malay was the lingua franca of that time. So obviously, there was a whole mix of languages being used there, and because Dutch, for example, Dutch didn't stay on, right? We have words in very few. I
Mm,
think Indonesia has more words in Dutch than us, but Dutch didn't stay on, even though the Dutch intermarried.
mm.
Married, they didn't do it that
Yeah.
much, but they did,
Mm,
especially married Christian women, and then the language of the family still ended up being Malacca Portuguese. So Malacca Portuguese was somehow more dominant than
mm,
Dutch. So I think you have to look at what the history was and what
mm,
happened,
mm.
and sometimes people just wiped everything out. No
Mm.
practicing your culture, no practicing your language, and that
Yes.
even
Yeah.
happens now with conversions and so on, right? You say you cannot do this. This is anti. This is anti this other religion or
Mm,
whatever, and so who knows what happened in the past that this mixed language or
mm,
Creole didn't develop. Yeah.
mm. Yes, because when I see the Tugu Creole, for example, what's left from Tugu Creole is the keroncong now,
Mm,
and but the fact that most of the keroncong of the Tugu Creole consists of a lot of Dutch languages inside.
mm,
So I think that's also quite interesting to
mm,
see that the Dutch language become
mm,
one of the artifacts of
mm,
the Tugu
mm,
Creole
mm,
itself, you know.
mm.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
I mean,
it's
when I
interesting
look
to
at
observe.
somebody
Mm,
had shared,
mm,
what is the song? It's a Keroncong song
mm,
about a cat. Sarah would know better.
mm,
It's one of my favorite songs to listen to, and
mm,
I mean, when I read the lyrics, or I see the lyrics, I can understand most of it as being, because it's very close to Malacca Portuguese, right? Because it was people from Malacca that were brought, or the original people who left were from Malacca, just as in Macau, when it was the 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 main point, the focal point was from Malacca going to Macau, Malacca going to Indonesia, and then the Dutch influence coming in. So actually, the Tugu Krojong songs, the ones that I've seen, we can actually understand quite a bit of it if you speak Malacca Portuguese, and
mm,
similar to Sri Lankan Portuguese. So it's isn't it funny that all these Creoles, even though
mm,
they have different language content, like you had
yeah.
Dutch and Bahasa Indonesia, and then
Mm,
we have Malay, and also we have the other, Indian Chinese languages around us. Sri Lanka has Sinhalese, Tamil.
mm, mm,
Yet when we look at them, we can pretty much, sorry, in Macau with Cantonese, we can understand a lot of it. The pronunciation may be slightly
mm,
different, but essentially it is like almost like the same language that developed, the same Creole that developed. So which is why we think when it came to Malacca, it was already a
mm,
form of, it had like the beginnings of a Creole, if you like. It was already a
mm,
mixed language. So it wasn't like how we think,
mm.
we romanticize it and say
Yeah,
A
yeah.
married
Mm,
B, had
yeah.
children, and then the children started speaking this as
Mm,
their first language. I think that's a very romanticized and maybe wrong way of looking at
mm.
things. Yeah. And it
Okay.
wasn't like old Portuguese came and then, that ancient Portuguese of the 16th
Mm,
century stayed on. I think historically we look at the facts and the data. That is not so. Yeah. So
okay.
yeah.
Thank you. And I think there's still one, oh, sorry for the background. There's
We're
still
all at
one thing.
home, right?
Yeah, there's still one questions.
Mm-hmm.
This times is from Anissa Larasati.
Mm-hmm.
Hello, Professor Stephanie. I'm Anissa, a UM alumni from Semarang.
Oh, hello.
reading your work is always interesting for me as I feel that I can relate it with what happened in my society.
Mm-hmm.
Today, I myself cannot speak high-level Japanese and choose to switch to Bahasa Indonesia. So, do you think that language variety, which has a lot of speakers
Hello,
like you,
hello.
may also be endangered?
um, or like Javanese, because Javanese has
Yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yes,
Mm,
yes, because of policies, right? So
mm,
the question
Mamay
about
na.
policies.
It's
Yeah.
okay lah.
Oh, Sarah, we can hear you,
Ah, they
Sarah.
can hear me now. Hi. Finally.
Yes.
finally.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'll
Mhm.
leave Nazar to ask you questions.
Okay.
Okay, okay. Please, Sarah, you can share a bit about the your experience in teaching the Malacca Portuguese.
Okay, I started in 2012. I only had 5 children with me at that time. And today I have more because of the online lesson. So there are improvements. The children, I get feedback from parents that says that, the child can speak. They actually communicate. Actually, I have
Mhm,
3 who can really converse very well. Shana, Sherilyn, and Leona. They can really speak now. At one time, they could not. When you speak to, especially to Shana, when you speak to her, she know, I don't understand what you're saying. Can you speak in English or not? So, but
mhm.
today, if you speak to her, she can understand you. She can converse
Okay.
and she can reply me.
Mm,
I
okay. Mm. And how many students do you have now?
can say more than 20 because
Oh, that's
I
nice.
have adults. I have 2 groups.
Mm,
Adults classes is from 2 p.m. to 3 p.m. and the
mm,
children is from 3 to 4 p.m. Sometimes we drag longer with the kids.
mm.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is also uh, in relation with my questions about the local initiatives for the revitalization because in some of the in some of the sources about language revitalization, they always say that we as the linguists we are not uh, Indiana Jones who come to help them like to survive the language because that's not the main job of the linguist itself. So how about the local initiatives in the Malacca Portuguese itself? Is there a lot of initiative coming from the Malacca Portuguese speakers?
I think because now even Filomena Sengho is also teaching
Mm,
online. She uses
mm,
Facebook to
okay.
teach the language. And the grandmothers,
Mm,
they
mm,
do communicate with their grandchildren in
mm.
this tongue, yeah, in the Malacca Portuguese language.
Okay,
Mm.
interesting. Mm. And and also, well, I was also interested in the funding topic about the funding from Stefanie that how supportive the university or maybe the government in these kinds of activities.
I can say if it's from University Malaya, of course,
Mm,
100% we had a support from
mm.
them. Yes.
Okay,
Yes.
okay then. Thank you very much, Sarah.
Welcome.
Mm. And then
Thanks, Sarah.
I
Welcome, Steph.
I want to go back to Anisa's questions
Yes.
before.
Yes,
So
about how majority speakers, is that
yes,
the one?
how?
Yeah, yeah,
Mm,
that even majority speakers can lose their language.
mm,
Yes, I mean, I think numbers, we have learned very quickly that numbers is not
mm,
the denominator at all. You have to look at other things like policy. So if language policy suddenly, English education
mm,
becomes the enabler for higher social mobility or economic mobility to get you better jobs, and
mm,
somehow English education is given more, becomes more prestigious, then what will happen is that parents will start pushing their kids to speak English, go to English schools, which has happened to us
mm,
before,
mm,
right? And unfortunately, when we do that, we somehow feel, oh, we cannot let our kids speak, whatever, whether it's Tamil or Cantonese or
mm,
Malacca
mm.
Portuguese, because it will pollute their English. And
Yeah, yeah.
which we know from research is wrong, right? We know that kids have the capacity to be multilingual. They may get everything crossed, but that's how just how our minds work. But eventually, they will know how to filter systems. But a lot of parents, even Tamil speaking parents that we have spoken to, are bringing up the kids completely in English because they feel, oh, English is the thing, and we are all victims of it in a sense that we grew up in English speaking homes, either because we were biracial, but also because maybe our great grandparents did that to our parents, right, and brought them up in English because we thought that was the way to go. That was to show, to be educated, and unfortunately, in doing so, we often lose our heritage language, and that heritage language, mind you, may be a variety of that language as well, because we then start to, humans, we like to categorize things, so we will say this English is good, or this Malay is good, and this Portuguese is good, this is wrong. So don't speak this kind of English because then it will pollute your other English. But we know that we have different kinds of varieties, right? And we can compartmentalize as you grow older, right? And you'll be able to figure out, and the way that we teach it as well should be that, okay, in this context you use it like this, in this context you can use this other variety, but we don't. Instead we label bad good, wrong right, and that's also educators doing it, right? Not just parents. So, yeah.
Yeah, and still related with that, this from Mulyani. Professor Pillai, could you show or hear us the example of Malacca Portuguese expression in daily life? Maybe just a little bit,
Yeah,
because
Sarah is here, so you should ask Sarah. Otherwise, I'm going to sing to you, Nina Boboy. Sarah, come back. Sarah, we want you to say a few things in Kristang, okay? The famous one that we will always ask is, sudah makan, Jak Kumi? Dah makan? Okay, Jak Kumi.
Kira yo falah.
Anything also can. She's like, what should I say? Well,
Okay, Bung Pamyang,
good morning.
Ozun dia, yo takuze, arus frito. Yo
Today, she is making or cooking fried rice.
Yo tersigi, yo se abo fami se recipe.
Oh, she is using her grandmother's recipe to cook the fried rice. Okay.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, not bad, my translation.
Oh, very good.
See,
Well done.
I have good teachers, Sarah. You know. Teacher
Thank
is
you,
maestri, right? Maestri.
Yeah, maestri.
Yeah, maestri is teacher, so we are all maestries.
Now I'm started considering to learn Malacca Portuguese.
Yeah. You should.
Yes.
You should. And then you can also then understand keroncong tugu.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. Very similar.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
Thank you, Sarah.
Welcome.
Okay, and now Ibu Sonia want to share a comment.
Okay.
So I will let Ibu Sonia.
Yeah.
Hello.
Hi.
Thank you.
Hi, Sonia.
Hi. So, I'm not sure whether it is a perfect example, but I think it is. I think I want to share a little bit what I know about the case of attitude of a language. What you said earlier about the one of the aspects we need to maintain a language. Because I'm from the German studies program, so sometimes I watch or listen to TV, like interviews or something. And one time I watched a television interview with Hannah Arendt, the philosopher of German Jewish descendant. And I think it was done in the 60s, and she was asked by the journalist. He said, well, Hannah Arendt was forced to leave Germany during the Nazi regime. And at the interview, she was asked by the journalist, what was the thing that you miss the most about Germany? And she replied, I miss the language. And then the journalist was quite shocked. I think he didn't see that coming. The answer. But then Hannah Arendt said it was the Nazi that was doing the horrible things, not the language. That's what she said. So that kind of reminded me of what you what you shared with us earlier about the attitude of the language, of how we associate or how we connect language to certain memories, despite the horrible things that has happened to her and her family. But I think at some point she still has some memorable things that she associate with the language that she cannot find elsewhere. Yeah, so from the biography, we understand that she for quite some time was living in Paris and in America, but still inside her, deep down, she's still reminded of the language that she used when she was a child. So this was kind of an attitude, I think. That's it. I just want to
Yeah,
share
no,
that.
thank you, Sonia. In fact, we're getting that with a lot of people who grew up around grandparents and maybe even, parents who spoke the language, but they were made to learn to use English as a first language, right? And they are now in their probably 70s or even older, or 60s, late 60s. And then suddenly, when they hear these things that we put up, and they see recipe books that also are bilingual or trilingual, they suddenly say, hey, yeah, mom used to say this word all the time. Or they remember certain, yeah, you're right, it evokes that time where that language was related to certain food, certain their mothers, or and it's kind of like it brings back, suddenly they remembered that the words that the grandparents, and they're like, oh, that's what it meant, that's what they used to say. Yeah, so it's kind of sad, but then I don't blame people who did it, because that was just the social situation, the economic situation, the whole in war, right? People having to move from one place to another. So all these things have an effect. So I guess if we do have the opportunity, we should not waste it. If we have the all the enablers that I talked about, and also the factors around us that can help, I think that if we have the capacity to do it as linguists, as researchers, to work with communities, and there is a will for the communities, then I think we should not let it pass, right? We are also advocates. We can also fight, and we can also inform policy. We can also say why this is important, especially now, with so much of digital technology available, where the cost can actually be cut down tremendously, and the sharing is also easier, can be made easier. We can think of so many innovative ways to do things. I think that it is a sin almost, for us, just to focus on our research, publish, which is what we need to do. But also, can we connect with communities? Can we assist? Can we not be Indiana Jones? Absolutely, So I think Nazar is. I hate that like grab and go kind of thing. But to engage with communities and work with them, if we can do that, why aren't we doing it? Is my question. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you, Sonia. I think that is a very
Thank you.
beautiful story that you shared with us.
Yes, thank you for letting me share, Nazar and
Okay.
Professor Pillai. Yeah.
Thank you very much. And I think since there is no other questions coming, and that comment would ended this discussion. It's really nice discussion, and it's ended like, the highlight is language connected with a certain memory indeed, and it is just more than just a nostalgic memory, I
Yeah.
guess.
Yeah.
So do the Malacca Portuguese and other
Yeah.
Creoles that exist in Southeast Asia in this case. Okay, and thank you very much for sharing with us,
Thank
Professor
you. Thank you
Stefanie,
so much.
and thank you very much for the other for coming and join this. And I would
Thank
like
you,
to give
everyone.
a
Thank you so much.
tepukan bergemuruh for you.
Oh,
Thank you very much.
terima
Yes.
kasih, muito
Yeah.
merci.
Okay. Thank you very much,
Thank you,
and I
guys.
hope
Thank you
to
for having me. Yeah,
see
thank you so
you
much. Hey,
in
Eunice.
the next.
Hi. These
Uh,
are my former students. Oh, so sweet of you all to
See you in
join.
the next
Yes,
meeting of
yes,
linguistic
yes,
lecture
yes.
series.
Thank you so much,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank
Bye.
you very much.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Bye.
you.